Today we're flipping the script on Mr. Grow It. Please welcome Chris to Perfect Gardens TV. Let's go ahead and get into it. You're here with Mark Boutwell on Perfect Gardens TV. And then you say something, Sage, and then say, remember to give a thumbs up.
Hi, I miss you. Papa miss you. I love you. Bye-bye.
Please say, oh no. Say it one more time. Say, please remember to give a thumbs up. Look at the camera. Say, please give me a thumbs up. If you haven't checked out our monthly membership, I highly recommend to do so. For only $2.99, you get access to over 1,570 photos, 162 videos, 10 files, 15 audio files, 562 shared links, and 86 members willing and ready to assist you through your growing practice. Make sure to hit the join button on the bottom of every video. All right. So, Mr. Grow It, what got you started, brother, in the industry?
Well, I mean, what got me started just really with cannabis in general is, I started when I was 12 consuming, believe it or not. I had an older sister. I still have an older sister. And she introduced me to cannabis. Her and her friends were always smoking out in the backyard. And she got me involved when I was 12. I smoked my first joint when I was 12 years old. And I actually didn't get stoned my first time. I'm not sure if any of you guys got stoned your first time or not. It took me like 4 or 5 times in order to actually get stoned. I'm not sure if just because it's back in the day, it was all that swag, that Mexican brick weed. So like not very potent stuff, but it took me a little bit to get stoned. And then once I did, I just kind of fell in love with it. You know what I mean? I was in like 6th and I started smoking a lot when I was in 7th and 8th grade. And a buddy of mine actually ended up always taking it from his mom. And so we'd be riding bikes and going behind this plaza area with a whole bunch of stores, and we just smoke in various ways, through bottles and through wooden pipes and just all the stuff you would smoke back in like the early 2000s, you know what I mean? And really, I got to the point where I got in trouble with school because I was dealing. So I've actually been pretty open on this myself. I got arrested in school for dealing, and had like 3 people rat me out. They got busted with it, ratted me out. I got caught with it. I actually talked about all this stuff on my From the Stash podcast with me, Rob from Cannabis Lifestyle TV, and Pigeons 420. So I won't get too deep into that story. But really, it just, it was so illegal where I lived for so many years. And I really kind of got into the industry and started doing content creation back in 2015. That's when I first found out, well, actually it was like 2013 is when I first found out about YouTube, people, actually uploading their grows onto YouTube. And I was like, what the heck? You can do this? This is allowed on YouTube? Like, what the hell? So like, I actually got addicted to it to where I was trying to learn all the different ways that people were growing. And I'm like, wow, you can do it more than just Fox Farm nutrients and HID lightings and Fox Farm soil. And that's why I started out. I did like the first 6 years as that. And then I uploaded my first video at the end of 2015. And then it just kind of took off from there. I mean, I had people asking me questions left and right. So I built a website, wrote a book. I really enjoy writing. Wrote my first book back in 2016, revised it 2 times. It's called 7 Steps to Grow Cannabis. It's a beginner's guide to growing indoors. I'm part of 2 podcasts now, one called Garden Talk with Mr. Grow It, which Mark, you've been on that before. And then From the Stash, which Mark, you've actually been on that as well. So 2 different podcasts. I'm launching another YouTube channel, sponsorships left and right. It's just, it's gone crazy these days. So that's where I started and kind of up to somewhat where I am right now.
That's actually a really great example and a phenomenal story to hopefully motivate other people out there that if you have a passion, if you're interested in something, just get started. And there's something I always tell people, even they're like, Mark, I have no experience. I've never done this before. I say, fake it till you make it. But remember that there's 2 parts to that. You're faking it in the beginning, but then until you make it. And then that's when you become like you, Mr. Grow It, Chris, you become a keystone in the industry. So I appreciate that very much. Next question is, what's your vision for this industry and for yourself? What's your vision in the next 5 years, I guess?
Well, I think the industry is just going to get bigger and bigger, right? We are at a point where things are becoming more and more legalized. across, not only just states where I live in, but the world. More and more places are becoming legal. So I think that's kind of the future for it. More and more people are going to be coming on board. I've been living in Las Vegas now for about 10 years. And in 2016 is when it actually became legalized here. I've had a local card. I've been growing since 2010. So I've kind of seen the evolution of it. But they didn't have dispensaries until 2000. I think it was 2016. They started having dispensaries, and it was medical only. Then that November is when they went rec. And then it went crazy from there. And now we have Planet 13, the largest dispensary in the world. They're taking that model and they're going to different states as well. They've got one in California. I think they're looking to open one in Chicago and Florida, a couple locations. So things are just getting bigger. We have the largest dispensary getting bigger. More home growers are coming on board now that the fact that more and more states are becoming legal and they're becoming friendly for growing. I didn't mention this earlier, but I'm really on the home grow side of things. I'm not commercial at all. I just grow for myself. I'm a medical patient. I grow about 12 plants max. That's all I can grow at the maximum. So I usually like to keep it somewhat small compared to a lot of people. And I think that's one reason why people relate to me so much, is because there's a lot of people doing home growing just like me, so. But yeah, as far as for the future, things are just getting bigger and bigger, more and more legalized, more companies coming on board, more companies kind of getting pushed out, as good companies are coming up, there are going to be fake companies or companies that are, you talk about fake it till you make it, right? But these companies that really just aren't in it for the customer are more in it for themselves, short-term things. So I think we're going to see a variety of those types of things happen in the future for sure.
That leads into the next great question is, what are some of your core values as you push your culture forward in your company? What are some of the guidelines that help guide you through your decision making?
I would have to say continuous improvement. I worked for Amazon.com for 8 years, actually. And one of their core values was continuous improvement. And I think that's definitely one thing that I've kept moving from Amazon and going on to my own venture. There's so much to know about this plant. I don't think a lot of people know that we don't know everything. There's still so much science to be uncovered in regards to the plant, in regards to just cannabis as a whole, consumption, various extraction methods, so on and so forth. So really having the mindset that I don't know everything. I'm learning. I'm actually back in school right now. I'm going to Utah State University. I'm going for my cannabis cultivation certificate under Dr. Bruce Bugby and the team over there. And there's so much in that course that I'm learning for the first time. So pushing myself to continue to learn, that's definitely a core value of mine, continuous improvement. Also, another core value would be to freely share. The more we talk about it, the better it is. The more it's normalized, the more it's legalized. Right? If we're influencing people to start growing, or to at least talking to people about it, then hey, maybe we can get some of these folks that are against legalization for legalization just through education, right? So I think my family is a perfect example of this. My mom and dad were against it. My brother was completely against it. He never smoked in his life. My sister was the only one that actually introduced me to it. But educating them on cannabis, the medical benefits. My mom has seen like documentaries on Netflix now, and that's another thing that has changed her about it, just seeing the medical benefits. If we all contribute to that, just with people that we know, I think that's going to help normalize things and help with more people wanting to be on board with legalization. So freely sharing that information. I don't hold my stuff behind paywalls. Nothing against people that do. I do have a Patreon, which people can support me for it, since, YouTube and stuff like that, they don't monetize and blah, blah, blah. It's another whole different avenue that we could potentially talk about. But last core value would be to have fun with it. I don't think anybody should be going to a job or doing something in their life that they don't like to do. There are a lot of people that are stuck in jobs that they don't enjoy going to, wake up in the morning and dread going there. I feel like that was me at one point. And as I, built up the strength to leave Amazon and to leave some of these other companies I've been to and go towards my own thing, I've been happier in life. And I've just been trying to have fun with it, trying to, again, learn more, do different things, and just enjoy the process. So those are some of the core values.
You brought up some good points that hit home for me. It's the education, and why it hits home so close to me is because my father grew up in a whole different era. He was born in 1946, and up until my father's death, which was cancer, we tried to introduce him and get him to try cannabis. He wasn't sleeping at night. He wasn't eating. There were so many variables with the medications that the doctors had him on. Literally a shoebox filled, plus some, that he was taking on daily, weekly basis. And his point of view was, I don't do drugs. I seen what cannabis did to people in Vietnam and all this. My father was an MP in the military or in the army. And up until his death, he would not accept that there was benefits to help him. And it was the lack of education. It was the marketing and the stigmas that came behind it, fear of reefer and all these info commercials and commercials that was being, and it still trickles into 2021, where we still have generations with this mindset. So what you said, educating, being open, and just as it becomes more normalization, hopefully more and more papers are going to get published, right? Because all these scientists, like, yeah, we can do studies, but we can't publish anything. Everything is always left to, in theory, cannabis does this, in theory, cannabis. And then you have scientists that are like, no, but it's showing in the labs, this is what it's doing. Even so forth, more of the recent are about our endocannabinoid systems. So education is really important. I love that you said that.
That actually hits home with me because my dad was just diagnosed with lung cancer over the summertime, and he went through radiation, chemo, and sounds just like your dad, who's against it,
Yeah.
never done it. Well, actually he's done it back in the day, but wasn't realized it wasn't for him. Still to this day, doesn't want to have anything to do with it. We did convince him, if he is feeling side effects from chemo, one thing, potentially it helps with his nausea, right? He said he was open to try it. However, nowadays chemo, they've got so many pills now that you don't really feel that. He didn't feel the side effects from it, which I was shocked on. So medicine has really come a long way on that one, but yeah, it is there to help cancer patients. That is for sure.
Sorry guys, I got a little homeschool in the background. It's kind of funny how guys and women in a white lab coat can convince people to do something and not to do it. And it's crazy, some of these key positions in our society that helps influence people. Next question was your evolution of growing method. Where did it start and where's it now?
Oh man, it's been a long journey. So like I mentioned earlier, I started growing in 2010, and the first 5 to 6 years was the same shit. It was Fox Farm soil. I usually do Fox Farm ocean forest soil, Fox Farm trio of nutrients, some CalMag, and then HPS lighting. So I'd have the MH for veg, have that blue spectrum in there, try to get that tight node spacing, keep them somewhat squat. And then the HPS in flowering. So switching out that bulb. Now it's gotten a lot different since then, right? I think a lot has changed just in the last 5, 6, 7 years alone. Back then people loved hydroponics and they loved the precision that you can have. You can argue that there is no more the precision that you can get from hydroponics and spoon feeding synthetic nutrients. Some people still to this day says that's far superior than going the organic route. However, we're now in a generation where everyone's going organic, right? Where we've got people using organic amendments. We've got people going the living soil route with beneficial, microbes, beneficial, worms, insects, all that stuff, to a more natural route rather than the bottled line. I've transitioned that way. I've done several grows now for probably 3-4 years. I've been growing organically, mostly just with the top dressing organic nutrients. I've added in worms, red wigglers, European night crawlers, cover crops, mulch layers, reusing soil, regenerative gardening. I'm now composting. So I've definitely gone that route. But I also do still continue as the bottom line. I'm with Dutch Pro Nutrients. They're a sponsor of my channel. They're a sponsor of the education that I put out. So I do have plants that I grow with synthetic nutrients and try to get that precision down. So yeah, that's kind of evolution of a little bit of where I was back then and kind of where I am now, where I'm going now. But things are always changing for sure.
Well, I commend you, because teaching and encouraging people how to go down the pathway they want to go down is a teacher, right? It's a guide, and if you narrow yourself too far into one direction, you yourself become limited in your own education. And so I commend you for that. So one of my most favorite books I have actually ever read, sad to say, I can't remember the dang name of it, was actually an accumulation of 100 different stories of his favorite 100 books. And when I was like, man, I was trying to really get curious on what could I really talk to you about that was slightly different. And I thought, you know what, let's do a synopsis of one thing that you loved about each of your interviews, going down. And there's more than this, of course. I just put a list here to kind of get our train of thought going. But I just wanted to kind of start off from your most popular videos all the way down to your least, to the ones that you just uploaded and are just starting to get traction. Okay, so so Pigeon 420 was actually your second video that kicked off the channel. Was that correct?
Yep, second one on the Garden Talk with Mr. Groyd podcast. That was actually last year, a year and a half ago. Wow, time flies.
What you guys talked about plant training techniques. What was one thing on that video that kind of was like an aha moment, or it was like, oh, that's interesting, I'm gonna try that out?
I think one thing that really stuck out is sort of an aha moment. I wanted to try it out, but haven't yet, is the fact that pigeons, his technique is he does a lot of super cropping, and he does it very, very early. And his technique is to actually do the super cropping early to build up the strength of the stems, right? So breaking that outer layer of the stem, kind of having it flop over, super cropping, typical, same super cropping that everybody knows of, but doing it on every single branch. So that way, when the plants are older, he says that the stems is going to be a little bit more strengthened for them, help hold up those buds when needed. So I thought that was super interesting. That was one moment there where I was like, oh, wow, that's really interesting. I never heard of anybody doing that before. And it seems to be working out great for him.
Absolutely. Anyone that can document and show other people, and people at the end of the day, they're really sketchy still in the states they live in. And if you can learn to grow one plant and reduce your stress, doing a few growing techniques, I highly encourage it. All right, for CLT TV, you guys talked about feeding plant nutrients. What was one thing in that video that captured you?
So that was with Rob from Ken Lifestyle TV. Great guy. I mean, we actually have our own podcast as well. Me, Rob, and Pigeons. Like I mentioned, we all got together. We have the From the Stash podcast. That episode in particular, when we talked about feeding nutrients, one thing that really stuck out is just the way that he explains things in such a beginner-friendly manner. He's got a completely different style than me is in regards to feeding. We went over feeding in both cocoa and in soil. If I remember correctly, back then he didn't really grow much in soil. I believe, if I remember correctly, it was mostly a cocoa. So we had a lot of feedback when it came to growing in cocoa. I found out there are different ways to feed in cocoa. You know what I mean? The way that I did it and was successful, he did it a little bit different, whether it be the pH range or the bottle nutrient lineup that he was using. There are different things that different ways to grow in the same medium. So that is one thing that kind of stuck out with that one. But like I mentioned, he's fantastic at explaining things like that. He actually has his own course, 420 Growers Club course that he has. Actually is him and several other people have courses as well. It's a membership site. And so he's training people on a daily basis. And you see, he really has a gift for teaching people his method of growing. And he's been very successful at it. So I thought that was a great conversation, especially for new people who are brand new, just starting to feed plants for the first time. I think that was a fantastic episode for somebody like that.
I definitely recommend people to go check out, if you are growing in cocoa, to check out his videos, because just like how Chris said, there is how many different ways there are to paint a painting, right? And same thing with growing in cocoa. I do the classic, add a little worm castings in there because it just stabilizes stuff. But like you said, there's a lot of different people that when do you put in CalMag? You know, do you put it in every feeding? Do you you know, there's a lot of different thought processes that go around cocoa, and relatively, I don't want to say it's a new growing media, but I would say that it really did take off probably like in 2011, because I remember still, I don't even know if I can even find the bricks in stores anymore where you were able to like add water and inflate them back up anymore. Everything's bagged up and made easy, pre-washed. So I know cocoa is definitely a new media that I think people have just been approaching in the last 8 years or so. So highly recommend check out those videos. How about Chris from Happy, or I apologize. How about Grow Tents? How about the Grow Tents?
Welcome to the Grow Tent. Yeah, it was, oh man, that was one of the most popular episodes that we had. He's very popular on social media. And it's really because of his way of explaining things are so easy. You know, he, like, the beginners really just flock to him because of the way he explains things. I remember that episode. There was a couple things that really stuck out. Number one, he gave some good advice about drying out your media. That's one technique to go about it. I know it's debatable, but in order to kind of get rid of pests, what he likes to do is he likes to dry out his media prior to even planting anything in it. So he uses bag soil, if I remember correctly. He'll dry it out to kind of kill off any of those fungus gnats that may be in there that come with bag soil, a lot of these brands, and then rehydrating and then planting into it, something that he's been doing for a while and it works well for him. And I wouldn't disagree with him on that, because every time I have fungus gnats, one of the things I do is I dry out the media. Now, of course, when I'm using, there's a difference between using synthetic bottled nutrients and using organic. Usually when you're organic, you want the medium to be moist at all times. So generally, it's not recommended to dry out your medium like that. But using bottled nutrients, I think that's something you can do in order to avoid fungus gnats, is to dry out that medium. Another thing that kind of really stuck out on that particular interview is he ignores humidity altogether. It goes to show that this plant is going to grow under various ways, right? Like a lot of us do crop steering, right? Where we want to dial things in, in our conditions, you know, whether chase after VPD or we have a certain temperature and humidity that we're going after because we think growth is going to be the best at that temperature and humidity. You can, you know, he goes to show you can avoid humidity altogether and the plant will still grow. Now, of course, your final outcome, the final product may not be the best quality. Some people can argue against that one, but the plant will still grow. It'll still produce cannabinoids and terpenes and all that stuff. The quality of your flower would probably be impacted, but the plant will still grow. The plant's resilient. It'll still grow and you still get a harvest on it. So one thing that he mentions to beginners is that's probably one thing you can avoid to start. You know, don't really worry about that too much. Maybe your second or third grow, you can worry about dialing in humidity. So I thought that was super interesting. And it goes to show that there are a lot of things where we talk about temperature, humidity, CO2 that really are general ranges. Mark, I think you talked about it on your the podcast episode we did, where it's you know, you've got that ideal range and then you've got the tolerance range, right? So the ideal range, the plant will still grow outside of those ranges, whether it be, you know, ppm or CO2 ppm or temperature, humidity, so on and so forth. So it just goes to show that the plant's resilient and there's some factors that you can ignore and still get a harvest.
I really actually enjoyed listening to him speak. Actually, he was I hate to say it, it's a weed, right? We behave like prima donnas in the industry, is where it has to be a certain way, you know. And yes, it does look really beautiful, and when you really care about something, of course you're going to put in extra 10 or 11 care. Although that art to start, and that's another phenomenal book I recommend people to do, is just, and if I remember straight, like one of the first lines in the book, because the book was pretty thick, but one of the first lines in the first page was, he was like, put down the book and start, and I was just like, oh, okay. And that's really how he approaches it. He says, just get going. When you run into a problem, look at it, but no matter what, you're going to get a harvest, and appreciate that. And then from there, be systematic in improving it. So definitely actually enjoyed his simplicity around how he thinks about how to grow these plants.
And if we look at the normalization and the legalization expanding too, it's bringing so much more in terms of products to the table that weren't accessible 5-10 years ago. And what I mean by that is now, the beginner grower can buy that 600-700 watt light, and their mindset is not just, they haven't just grown the plant yet in basic conditions, and feel a lot of problems are derived from this massive diversity of what we can buy. And it's such good advice, just to simplify things, let the plant grow, adequate amounts of water and feed, and you'd be so surprised. And like you said, Chris, it might not be the best at the end, but then it's a building block that you just you can keep going up as you learn. Add one more thing to the building block, do a few more grows, add one more thing to the building block. It doesn't need to be all done in your first grow. You don't need to understand VPD to the max in your first grow. You don't need CO2 supplements in your first grow. And like you said, Mark, we get so pre-bandana, like, oh, yield. But at the end of the day, I just want to grow a really healthy plant.
Yeah, totally. 100%. How about Chris from Happy Hydro?
That was a conversation that we had in regards to balancing your environment's condition. So it was all about like environment condition. It was awesome because of the fact that he's in a completely different environment. Like we talk about environment, natural temperature, humidity. In his area, he lives in upstate New York, is vastly different from where I am. I'm in the desert. I'm in Las Vegas. So he's dealing with separate struggles than I am, particularly in regards to humidity. Sometimes it's 60% plus natural humidity around where he lives. And that's never it. Where I am, I'm naturally 20 to 30%. I mean, right here, 27% is it right now, just where I am in this room. So I'm battling the low humidity. So I was able to speak upon that. He's battling the high end humidity. He's able to speak on that. And also temperature and humidity, how you control the temperature in your environment, whether it be hot or cold. And then CO2, as I meant to say, kind of things you can do in order to boost CO2. So that conversation was great. Another great beginner-friendly conversation. The environment's conditions is one of the things that I overlooked when I first started. I don't know about you guys, but I thought it was going to be easy to balance the temperature and humidity, right? And then I added the exhaust fan, and all of a sudden it sucked out all the humidity in the tent. And then I lowered the exhaust fan, all of a sudden the heat skyrockets, and it's like, well, what the heck? So you got to play a balancing game. It's like nonstop balancing between all the conditions. At least it can be, depending on where you live, what environment you're currently in. But yeah, I think that's one thing that really stuck out, is the fact that he was able to bring a different style of balancing the temperature and humidity that I was able to bring, coming from a couple separate areas.
Same thing. Mushroom farm, just kind of throwing out a small story about humidity because it's absolutely hilarious. That mushroom farm was built on a old concentration camp for the Japanese before in World War II, right? So, and they were built super quick. So the foundation didn't have any sealant or anything. So we were constantly battling high humidity, and it's because the moisture was seeping up still from the ground. And it took us 6 months to realize that all the more moisture was coming in from the ground, seeping up through the concrete. So my point to what I'm saying with you is you got to know your environment, because there's tons of things in your environment. If you're growing big time, if you're growing in the desert, you're growing up the state New York, wherever you're growing, your environment is constantly changing. And the key is to observe what's happening. And like you said, welcome to the Grow Tents video. Keep it simple. If you can't control it and make it ideal, try to bring it more into that growable conditions. Or if you can't control it all, just don't worry about it and focus on what you can. At least get some product off. But at some point, you're going to have to fix the problem if you're going to want to get the best top shelf.
Mm-hmm.
How about Dr. Autoflower? What was his? I bet that one was interesting. We've got a lot of talk on Autoflower this last year or two.
Autoflower is becoming more and more popular. Seems like more and more people are trying to grow out autoflowers. And that was a good conversation on how to get big yields off of it. That's one thing that, if you struggle with autoflowers and them being on that limited time span, you can't control when it goes to flower. It's just going to automatically go to flowers. So he went over a lot of tips in regards to what you can do in order to maximize yield, whether it be training or the way it's feeding nutrients and so on and so forth. So yeah, that conversation was, one of those ones where I think a lot of people tuned in and was actually able to get some pretty good advice on steps they can take in order to maximize their yield. So.
One of the reasons why I love that book on the synapses was because I probably would have never read all those 100 books, but it allowed me to listen to small little bits and pieces and be like, oh, wow, that's interesting. I need to go back and read that book in its entirety. So that's kind of how I'm encouraging people as they're listening to this now to just listen to those little snippets. And if they're interesting to you, to go back to Chris's channel, watch the entire interview, because they have so many little details that the first time you listen to it, you're going to be, wow, it's great. But I highly encourage you to go back and listen to it a second time, because that's when you're going to pick up the golden nuggets. How about Scotty Real? What was his interview like?
Oh, that one we mostly talked about. Yeah, Scotty Real. So from Dude Grow Show, he's been around for so long. That one was a pleasure to talk with him, just because he's had such a big impact on the YouTube community in particular. I mean, he's obviously on podcast platforms as well, but a huge influencer within the cannabis community on YouTube. And we talked about growing in cocoa. So that's what he likes to do. That's his bread and butter there. He grows larger plants in cocoa, plants that are like 5-6 feet tall, oftentimes indoors. So he was talking about his style of growing in cocoa. And I thought it was pretty interesting. Definitely got to hear more about him. And I mean, he has a bamboo farm and stuff. So hearing about some of his background and stuff was pretty cool. And then just hearing about what he does to be successful in cocoa. That was a really, really good episode. Popular episode. I think you have these sorted by most viewed to least viewed, I believe, because that was one that I remember a lot of people tuning into.
Yeah, right now it has 107,000 views at this current moment. It's only been up for 4 months. I highly recommend you guys go check it out, because it's difficult to really extract the good information unless it's in a conversation, in my viewpoint and opinion. So
yeah, he you can tune into his show. He talks about so much good stuff. I feel like that interview in particular that I did with him, I was able to extract some more specific information that maybe he's not able to get into on his own channels, and consolidate it all into one video. So I think it was really great to get that information out of him.
Next question is, why, maybe you don't know this, why do they call her the Painted Lady?
I have no idea. That's a good question. I don't know where she got her name from.
Her tattoos.
Oh, is it tattoos?
Yeah, it's like a term for when people are like painted in tattoos. So she's like the Painted Lady. I thought it was a cool name.
Oh, I love it. I was just wondering as well. So what was about her interview that you enjoyed?
We talked about feeding nutrients. It was feeding bottled nutrients in particular. One thing that really stood out in that conversation is when she had mentioned to me that it was because of me that she was using Bloom Yellow bottled nutrients. So it was, I think, back in 2017, I believe, I did a grow with Bloom Yellow bottled nutrients, and they have a huge bottle lineup. I don't use them anymore just because there's so many bottles, but it's an organic bottled line. And she was going to transition into organics. And she tried out the Bloom Yellow bottles, and I believe she's been using them ever since. She absolutely loves them. She's been very successful. She's tried all these other bottled nutrient lines before, and I think she was having trouble with a lot of them. And then she switched over to Bloom Yellow bottles because of my recommendation, or because of seeing me, I should say, use it successfully. And then she's been using it with success ever since. And now she's on the organic route. So that's one thing that really stood out for me on that one.
some pointing out the bloom yellow bottles. Like you said, there are so many bottles in that line. It is to my understanding. I've just been recently talking about to the rep, learning more about the nutrient line. Still back and forth on it. It still looks really good. My point to this is that if any of you guys are out there that are wondering or how to use that nutrient line, definitely go check her out too, because that's just like you said, they're each that's just like Dutch Pro. You're using it and you're teaching people how to use it, right? And same thing with her. If someone's using it and they're consistently using it over and over and over and willing to document their information, go over there and check them out. That's the golden nugget for anyone out there that's interested in checking out these nutrient lines. How about go ahead.
I never knew it was organic. That's even, I was even looking for them after watching you and watching her, and I wasn't able to come across it. I live right by Grower's house, but they don't carry it there. So I was trying to look for it online. I couldn't find it, but that makes me want to find it even more so, like now that I know that it's organic. So it's cool to learn that.
Yeah, we'll be diving in deep around it, hopefully learning more about it and seeing what it's all about. How about the Dawgo the Hutt? What do you remember about his conversation?
That was another one, growing in cocoa, and that was really inspired by one of the videos he had on his channel. He did a complete grow series on growing, like from planting the seed all the way through harvest, and that really sparked that conversation. And it's different from the Scotty Reel conversation because of the fact that he grows it in a different style, right? He's using a flood and drain tray. He's got a whole bunch of small cups lined up within a flood and drain tray, and he has it hooked up to a reservoir. You know what I mean? So he's automatically feeding his plants. And he's using a different nutrient line and so on and so. Well, actually, he might be using the same nutrient line as Scotty, if I remember correctly. Canna nutrients. Yeah, very popular with cocoa growers. But he brought in just so much good information, beginner-friendly manner of how he does it successfully. And he's very good at explaining things. I mean, very good at explaining things. We talk about somebody who relates to the beginner. I think his name should be put up there as among the best, just because the way he explains things, it's easy for new growers to kind of grasp onto it. Dawgo the Hutt, he's well known for being the host of GrowTube, the podcast back in the day, several years. I think he has over 100 episodes of GrowTube. It was a round table. There was a whole bunch of people on that panel, and it was getting 500 plus people tuning in on a weekly basis, and it was very successful and people loved it. So it was really an honor to kind of sit down with him and hear about just him growing in cocoa, his style of growing in cocoa. That was a very popular episode for sure.
How about Northwest J? What was that conversation like?
We were talking about pheno hunting in that one. And oh my God, he's one of the guys who he has very, very high standards for his product, his final product. He makes edibles. And he does pheno hunts for the edibles and the flowers that he chooses. And he's also a photographer. He takes 100 pictures or something. He's like, I need to take 100 pictures before I can find that one that's perfect. So he's very, very detail oriented, very particular when it comes to picking out phenos. He was talking about how he's very, I think he's for the terps. I guess you could say it is. He's talking about how he has phenos that smell like ballpark franks that you get from the ballpark. So ballpark hot dogs and pencil shavings. So he gets all these exotic type strains, I guess. I don't even know if I want to use that word exotic. It's so overused these days, but just these rare, unique smells and tastes. He loves to bring that out. He'll pheno hunt until he gets what he's looking for. He said he's never killed off a female, and he'll let everything grow till the end, harvest it, try out the final product. Because even if it's not the best looking pheno, maybe it's what he's looking for as far as characteristics for terpenes, cannabinoids, effects, so on and so forth. So that was super interesting to hear his take on pheno hunting, is his experience of what he does. Because pheno hunting is one of those subjective things to where it really comes down to the hunter, right? Mm-hmm. Well, what they're looking for and what they can find and pull out of genetics, I guess you can say. So
that's, again, highlight that right there, guys. If you want to stay in this industry for the next 10, this is my opinion on this. Opinions like assholes, everyone has one. If you want to stay in this industry and you're a boutique grower and you don't think you're going to ever have the means to get to a commercial situation, I highly recommend check out Northwest Jay's video, because that's how you're going to stay alive. That's how you're going to get the best dollar for your product. And you're going to have to be different than the commercialized market. When everything else tastes the same, they're going to be coming to your stuff because they'll be actually be able to notice a difference. So I highly recommend anyone out there that wants to see himself in this industry 5 years from now, at least being a mecca for the local community, it's going to be around the terps. How about Zerp 84?
Zerp 84, yeah. Canadian grower. He's also in the military out there, so to shout out to him for that one. Smaller home grower, newer. I think he has about 3 years experience when I talked to him about that. I love to bring a variety of growers onto the podcast, right? There are so many podcasts out there where they're experts, right? And they just talk about experts and the science and so on and so forth. And I have some of those people on my podcast, but I like bringing the new growers on there as well. You know what I mean? Back to the basics. There's a lot of things that we can learn from folks that are new, you know what I mean? Because they bring up points that we may have heard of in the past or may have come across in the past, but we like forget about it. And we take a step back and like overlook things, you know? So bringing him on kind of brings into that newer perspective of the way of doing things, and really talked about what made him successful. And he didn't come across a lot of things, you know, that I think he only had like one pest that he's ever been across. And there's a lot of things that he didn't have experience on just because he hasn't gone there yet. But it's definitely good to still hear his perspective on things. And in particular, I think it's another one. We talk about what helps new growers. Hearing a new grower, you know, somebody who has a year or two experience more, just hearing about what they're going through and what, as a newer grower, you could potentially come up to, I think was a beneficial conversation for sure.
You're really describing crude oil to isolate in this moment, right? Where if you only surround yourself around academics, you're going to isolate yourself down to an isolate, right? And then, but it just getting going, you're going to have a whole bunch of crude material of stuff you might not absolutely want. But as you go through this process of refining, you, like I said, you become an isolate. And it's so important to bring in new growers or guys just getting started and trying to connect that gap, because that's what creates the best product, right? You get rid of the worst, and if only the guys that are the beginning growers are all hanging out, they're only passing around bad ideas, right? And if all the academics are only hanging around, they're only passing around ideas that might not ever get put into application, right? And if when you bring them together, that's when you have real life doers and phenomenal concepts brought together to scale up. So I love that. That's super cool. How about, I had even asked this question because I don't like putting myself in the position. How about Perfect Garden to Mark Vowell? What did you think about that one?
Oh man, people are demanding a part 2. We got to do a part 2 soon, man, because that was an incredible episode. First podcast guest that actually put together a presentation. So you had a full-blown presentation on, we talked about, the benefits of the elements, some of the essential elements, and also what the deficiency looks like, as well as the toxicity looks like. And oh my gosh, you just blew people's minds with a lot of the things that you were saying in that one. We didn't get through all the elements, unfortunately. We got through a large handful. We did like an hour and 15 minutes. It was one of the longer episodes from what I can remember. But we definitely got to come back for a part 2 and pick up right where we left off, because it seems like every other day, I have somebody commented, part 2, please, part 2. Come on, when's the part 2? So I think that's so much great knowledge, because problems we come across, we need to know what the deficiency looks like on certain elements so we can make those adjustments. We need to know what the toxicity looks like for certain elements so we can, back off the gas pedal type thing, So I think that information was it was so key. And if somebody is watching this particular video and hasn't seen that one, head on over there, watch that one with Mark. At least go into the description section, download the presentation, and use that as a guide. If you're coming across a problem in your garden, you can literally go to that presentation, flip through some of the slides and kind of match up, should be able to somewhat match up the pictures of deficiencies and toxicities to what you're currently experiencing. You might be able to connect the dots there. So
we are working on part 2 right now, just to let you know. So I promise you,
we'll get it done.
We're going to make it better, man. I'm going through on the first one. I've already found a few mistakes I said, and I'm just like, oh, God damn it. So I'm really excited to go back and hit the parts that we didn't hit in the beginning and bring new awareness to other mineral deficiencies. So thank you, brother. Appreciate that very much. How about green globin? Dave, can you see that for me?
Green Goblin 510.
Green Goblin, organic grower. Oh my gosh. He, some people say he's more on the quieter side of things. It was funny once I posted that episode, his good friend Rob from Credit Lifestyle TV, which we talked about earlier. He's like, dude, I am shocked you got that much information out of him. You know what I mean? So I was able to really pull out a lot of good organic information, information on organic growing, I should say, out of him. And oh my gosh, his knowledge on it is pretty extensive. We didn't get anywhere near the amount of knowledge that he has in that episode, but it's definitely one to watch if you're into organic growing. Maybe you're in the intermediate type level. I would recommend you watch that one, see if you can pick up some of the best practices that he's talking about there. A lot of good information in that one.
How about medically fit? What was that conversation like?
We talked about all the different amendments. That's another one we need to do a part 2 on because we went over a lot of the common amendments that you can add into your soil. And I believe all of them you talked about were organic. So, a common organic fertilizers down to earth, and they have so many different boxes of different amendments that you have and that you can add on. So he basically was talking about, we went one by one and we were talking about some of the different amendments, what they do for the plant and kind of what dosage you should be feeding the plant when. So that's good for the folks that are maybe just getting into organics, want to learn more about the organic amendments that they can add at different parts of the plant's life. That would definitely hit the nail on the head on.
Highly recommend to check out that video. Any grower out there that is talking about dry amendments, because I do understand when people say it's so hard, right? And what they're talking about is hard because they have an immediate problem and they're reactive to the situation versus proactive, and it doesn't work right when you put it on immediately. And they're like, this is so difficult. And I get it. I completely understand. And any grower out there that's talking about dry amendments, putting time, energy, and love into it, and you want to go in the living soil direction, please go back, listen to that video, because they are going to give you key insight to what's going on in your soil. How about Austin from Chill LED Tech?
That was an awesome episode on LED grow lights. So he's from Chill Tech LED. He came on and, he talks a lot with customers. He's on the customer service side of things. And, I'm not actually sure if he still works for the company or not. I think he left the company. I'm not sure which lighting company he's at or where he's at, but like the knowledge when it comes to what you should look for when buying an LED grow light. There's so much information out there. There's so many different things that you can look at when it comes to LEDs. Oh, geez. I mean, talking about LEDs and the LED industry and all that stuff is a whole separate conversation. I mean, we get real deep into that. But really, what to look for when buying an LED grow light. I think we touch on a lot of great subjects. It could be overwhelming. I mean, we touch on so much that it could be overwhelming for a beginner. I think I had one person comment that says, I'm more lost than I was when I started. I was like, oh, geez, well, sorry about that. We're just trying to give you a whole bunch of information. So it could be information overload for some of the people. But, you could definitely tune in on that and actually have chapters. So you can click through the different chapters and it has different spots. So if you just want to learn about PAR, if you just want to learn about lumens, or if you just want to learn about whatever aspect of lighting efficiency, you can actually just click to those different sections. So very, very helpful for beginners or people that are looking to understand what to look for when buying an LED grow light.
This it's so funny because I still what was the dang name of these HIDs? They didn't even have it was HBS only, and they didn't even have a cover on it, right? And people would buy, and they would get so hot, and they were like $65. And then the big thing came out where they had a switchable from HID to Mel Highlight, and then it went to a digital, and then it went to a dimmable a digital. And each of these ones, there was new education we had to provide to the customer base of how to use it, or something would happen, or the bulb would mess up, or whatever. And now all the way to LEDs, where one LED controls 50 lights. You don't need a brain. They come right in. They're they're I don't know how many nodes on these, or not nodes, but LEDs on each of the panels now with reds and blues, and there's just so many options. It's really interesting because I stopped at HID. I didn't really ever get into LED. So even for me, I talk about all the time, it's a new education for me. Whenever someone asks me to make an LED video, I'm like, let me see if I know someone else. So I appreciate that. How about Vader OG? What was his conversation like? Anything that pops out?
Yeah, well, he's
his whole conversations.
He's a leading legend on the breeding side of things. So I tried to make it like an introduction to breeding for beginners. However, Vader's the type of person that is just so advanced. I mean, he's been breeding for 15 years, over 15 years. So he's way beyond kind of the beginner side of things. So I tried to get him to explain things in a beginner-friendly manner. Lots of good information when it comes to the basics of it. But definitely, I would say that's more for intermediate breeder. A beginner can try to watch that, but a lot of it's probably going to go over your head. Intermediate breeder, advanced breeding, just a lot of good knowledge on breeding. Technically I'm a breeder because I created a cross, but I'm not active, I would say, in breeding right now. I'm not really working on any breeding projects at the moment. But there's a lot to learn when it comes to the breeding side of things. And actually, that's another person I want to have a part 2 on, to try to get more advanced when it comes to breeding, even though more of it will probably go over my head. But hey, it's information out there for the public.
You guys just recently had him on your charity drive, and he was just dropping so much. It's just like, and even Rob was like, Vader's like the only one that gets everyone at the same time not to speak, and he was just speaking for 30 minutes, and you can, the audience was doing the same thing, just trying to pay attention, because his depth of knowledge and intuitivity to these plants is it really is at a whole nother level. And it's, even if it goes over your head, it's something you can keep watching over and over. These are those golden nuggets like you're talking about, Mark, and his competency. The people that we need to support, because they help drive what these breeders are doing, and not taking shortcuts, and taking the long term, where he really goes into the depth what it takes. And this is when it gets to be like, holy cow, there's this much. You don't just pollinate this and that. And he goes into picking those genes and so forth. So definitely Vader OG, check him out. You can probably get an episode from that donation drive. Just take a clip out of that.
Right.
That was a good conversation.
Yeah. Super advanced. He's, we were lucky to have somebody like him spilling that type of information. There are people out there who keep secrets to themselves, but he's very open when it comes to it, very transparent. I mean, he has a genetics company, Ocean Grown Genetics. So I think being transparent is a benefit for him, not only a benefit for him, but benefit for the community as well. So, yeah.
That is
breeding chamber.
No, go ahead, Hayes.
His breeding chamber build outs are really cool, and they're really informative if you want to get into breeding at all, and being able to shut off different sections so that way you're not cross-pollinating and stuff like that. But he's really in depth on all of that stuff, and I think a lot of people would pay attention and tune into that second one if he did do that. Even if you go deep into it, I know a lot of people would enjoy that.
There's a lot of that I would say is probably the final step in this industry to creating stability, is genetic, not diversity, but stabilizing the genetics out there. It's I think the second last one is mineral deficiencies, how to grow the plant, identify it. But the after they get past that, I think it's just going to, a lot of attention is going to be going to who's the good seed breeders. You know, there's so many crap seeds out there. They're flooding the market with shit out there, and the few people that it can just be the light in this industry and have enough attention drawn on them to bring up these questions, right? Where these people that don't know what to ask these breeders actually ask them, they can actually make a wise decision. So again, if you want to stay in this industry, and if you're just getting started, pick the right genetics, do your homework, because you do not want to spend 3 months, 6 months of your life where you're super excited and then you'd end up getting a horrible crop and you just dump your equipment back on the market versus ever really giving yourself to a chance to succeed. 100%. How about Sparks a Lot? What was the conversation like, brother?
Oh, Mr. Sparks a Lot. Yeah. We had a conversation about growing in small spaces. So he's a smaller home grower. I think he has like a 2x2 tent or a 2x4 tent as well. So he's got to keep things real small. I'm not sure. I can't remember if he's in like an apartment or a condo or what, but growing in small spaces. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who they're stuck to small spaces. You know, they have space constraints to where they can't grow in a large area. So really, we talked about how to utilize that small space, you know, in order to maximize yield. I think we got into that a little bit. We also got into just his style of feeding and controlling environment and all that stuff. So, yeah, if you're in a small space, that's probably a good episode to watch.
That's where most of the industry's at. And if you can utilize, like just like I said, that square footage, then it puts less demand on the commercialized market, where once again, a lot of crap products being produced and being flooded with the market. And if some guy can just utilize 2x2 square feet of space and produce enough for 3 months, 6 months, you know, that makes a difference. It'll make a difference in your own life. You'll begin to care about it more. You'll begin to want more things in your life. And before you know it, if you're starting in an apartment, you'll probably end up getting a house within a year just so you can grow more. I've seen that happen many times, actually. This little plan encourages people to want a better life for some reason, and it's crazy. Maybe that's why people don't want people to use it. How about Trey Strong's?
That one was on cloning. So Trey Strong's, he's also from CLTV. Yeah, he's all about cloning. He mostly does aeroponic cloning, so he was able to speak upon that. You know what to get into on cloning. It's one of those things where it's easy. It can be easy to mess up. You know, if you're not doing things right, you're not going to be successful type thing. So he's able to break things down on what he does on the aeroponic side of things for cloning. And I think I speak about how I do my cloning as well in that episode. But yeah, all about cloning.
Man, if anyone's doing aeroponics cloning, in my opinion, I don't like to do it. It's too finicky. If you get bacteria, you lose most of your plants and you're only transferring issues. But people that are pushing out lots of clones and are in that position, it is actually a really great solution. So anyone out there, once again, that is into aeroponics cloning and you want to commercialize that thought process for yourself because you need production and numbers to come off quickly, or because you're just going into that type of hydroponic system, highly recommend to check out anyone that's actually doing that type of cloning, because it is different and it's not like regular cloning. How about Beast Coast Farmers? You guys were talking about living organic methods. It was fairly interesting.
Yeah, Massachusetts grower. He does outdoor organics. He's also, I believe he does some indoor organics as well. But man, I think he said he started growing at 10 years old. So he was like super young when he started. He's got a whole bunch of experience. I actually interviewed him for a podcast that no longer exists 4 or 5 years ago called the Happy Hour Podcast. And we talked about, his style of organic growing. And since then, he's done so much different stuff. You know, he's into like KNF now and really just being outdoor organic, using the native soil in your area in order to grow cannabis, so lots of good information there. I recommend that for the intermediate to advanced outdoor grower who's growing organics.
How about Nate Lipton. You guys talked about lighting and nutrients.
Oh yeah, Nate from Grower's House. So he is one of the owners of Grower's House. It was good to have him on here. He's also the host of Canna Cribs. So a lot of you guys have probably seen that, where he goes to different commercial facilities and does tours, and very highly produced show that he has there. Yeah, we got into some good information about just a whole bunch of random things that I don't even remember all the things we talked about there. We talked about like nutrients, lighting, kind of where the industry is going, and so on and so forth. So it was good.
And I love his channel because he has a good platform of people that are constantly reaching out, staying and connected with other channels, and kind of like you said, they're actually making an effort to go to people, its operations, record them. And for me, that's like going into someone's home and figuring it all out, really knowing what's going on. I love watching their channels because it's just like, oh, interesting. I didn't think about that. I might be able to use that as I scale up the next operation or whatever. So definitely highly recommend to check out his videos, because he's into tons of different interviews with all kinds of people in the industry.
Absolutely.
How about Blue of Green Tank? Because I think his conversation around avocados and conversations around bananas and tons of stuff, the growing of different things, I thought that really opened up a lot of insight and thought process for people.
Yeah, I mean, regenerative gardening. A lot of people say that is the future. Closed loop operations. He's actually he's gotten to the point where he grows in raised beds. He's indoors, and organic grower, but he's gotten to the point where all he feeds is avocados, and he does like I believe he calls it a mash. So he'll like put in some amendments, he'll mix everything all together, and then put it inside, like on top of spread it on the avocado, put the avocado face down onto the medium, and then he'll just let the beneficial organisms go nuts. Worms and any beneficial insects that he has just goes crazy for the avocado, and the nutrients, obviously turns into nutrients to the plant, and the plant will be able to uptake them at that point. But yeah, I think it's pretty incredible that that's all he's doing for feeding now. I think he said he was on like his 14th run or 15th run or something along those lines.
Wow.
I think it was 8 runs, I believe, if I remember correctly, 8 runs where it's just avocados.
It was like, 8 years worth or something like that. Yeah.
Wow.
In the same bed with it. Yeah.
Ridiculous. So that's pretty incredible that you can get to that point. So props to him for innovating, like nobody else was doing that. He's the one that created that. He's the one that thought about it, fruit drop theory, about how it just drops down, breaks down normally, and then is food for the plants. So he started doing that with different types of fruit, avocados, I think he's just squash, pumpkin. So he's done a whole bunch of different things, but I think he said that avocado is what has been working best for him.
That's really cool. Mike, I know you got a few questions for Chris.
Well, I got one, Chris. I did see that last episode with the avocados, and my worms are loving it. It was a golden nugget on that one. Chris, I would ask you, with all the popularity with your YouTube, how does it affect you when you go out in public now? Do people walk up to you? Or did it ever put you in a funny situation? Because I work for Customs Canada, and the other day somebody was taking their flight and said, "Hey, how's it going, Bacon?" And my boss wanted to know what I was talking about. But so I was wondering, is you had anything like that?
Yeah, very few. I mean, there's only so first of all, I went to MJ BizCon a couple months ago, and it got recognized a lot there. Actually, a lot of people were calling me over the booths, trying to get me. Hey, I know you from YouTube. Come on over here, look at my product. So people recognize me just at MJ BizCon, which is pretty normal. I mean, that's the cannabis industry that goes there, right? So I had a lot of people that watched my videos approach me and say what's up to me. So that was pretty cool. But that's pretty. I guess expected. It's common, it's expected, because you're in an area where there's all these different people who are into cannabis. So obviously we're recognized more than just being out on the streets. The only time that I've been recognized out on the streets that I can really remember is I was at a Raiders game. So it was Raiders versus the Seahawks. It was a preseason game at their new stadium, Allegiant Stadium. So it was over the summer that just passed. I think it was August. And it was the mask mandate, so everyone's wearing their mask, right, at the game. And the person next to me like kept on glancing over at me. I was like just looking weird at me randomly, right? And I was taking my mask down. I was drinking and eating and all that stuff. And he's always just like peering over at me every once in a while, right? And then towards the end of the game, so it was his girlfriend sitting next to him, and then him, and then sparked a conversation with his girlfriend, while he was away getting something. I don't know if he was getting a soda or a beer or something. And she had mentioned she worked in the industry, the cannabis industry. I'm like, oh, no way. I'm in the cannabis industry too. I do content creation. She's like, that's what he said. And then her boyfriend came over and was like, I knew it was you. I watch your videos. Look, here's your channel right here. He's like, man, that's awesome. Can I get a picture with you? I can't believe you're here, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, that's super cool. It's like, what are the odds? I mean, there's like, 50, 60,000 people at the game. And then the person I sit next to, the group I sit next to actually recognized me for my videos. You got to think this is a very small niche, right? This is real small. Like we're talking about cannabis cultivation, mostly home grow. Like that's small. You can get bigger and bigger with the commercial side of things, bigger and bigger with the consumption side of things, but we're in a pretty small niche here. It's growing and growing, but yeah, it's really that one time has really kind of been memorable for being recognized out in public. And it doesn't really happen that often,
I think one of the largest channels on YouTube for our plan is what, like 750,000. I mean, it's tiny. This industry is so tiny. Chris, guys, Chris has so many more videos. He is bringing attention to people that deserve attention, that have literally been getting arrows in the back for the last few decades. I highly recommend you go check out his videos. I highly recommend you support him, give him a thumbs up. And Chris, thank you so much for coming on the channel and giving a little synopsis for all the hard work that you've helped bring to this industry for the last year and a half.
Thanks for having me on.
Chris, I know the episode's over, but I got one more question I'm dying to ask. Why did you, I've been following you for about 2.5 years, okay? Then you were doing your little grow things, and then you started doing the podcast. And lately I noticed that you came back to the grow things that I really appreciated, by the way. What made the transition? What made you go back to your roots?
So I have two channels, right? I have a main YouTube channel, which has over 219,000 subscribers, and that's my garden channel, right? So I show my plants. YouTube hates that channel. You know what I mean? Like anytime you show a plant, they're demonetizing you, they're suppressing you, they're age restricting, you're not getting recommended, so on and so forth. So that alone is one of those things where it's like, well, what the hell? I'm putting forth so much effort. Some of these videos take 10, 20 plus hours to edit because a lot of the videos, if you go way back, like my editing's kind of cringy, but I get better over time. I feel like I get better over time with the transitions, effects, all that stuff. It takes a lot of time. So I found myself really spending a lot of time on a video, and then all of a sudden the video would just do horrible. It wouldn't get many views. And it's like, well, what am I spending all this time really for? So I took a step back, and I went to the podcast side of things, from the Stash podcast. We've been doing it for over a year now. And that's been very popular. It's at the point now where that podcast is getting more views than my main YouTube channel. And I think my second YouTube channel, it depends on the episode, but it's getting just as much, if not more views on the talk side of things than my actual garden videos. And then, my podcast where I interview growers one-on-one, Garden Talk with Mr. Grow It. That's very time consuming as well. Reaching out to people to potentially come on there, creating questions. I create questions for just about every guest that comes on. That takes time, researching the guest, and then creating questions that revolve around a topic, actually doing the interview, then doing the editing behind it. So it's very, very time consuming. Now I'm lucky to have an editor now to help me with some of the editing of the podcast episodes. So that's why I'm back on the garden side of things. I free up time there. Well, now I can go back to the garden side of things. I'm taking a more simplistic approach for it. So you're going to see in the future on that, on my garden channel, that the videos are going to be a lot more simplified. And if people don't like it, people don't like it. I'm really over that point of, creating these, spending 10, 20, 30 hours per episode, trying to create effects and make it look perfect and very cinematic. I'm nowhere near some of the other guys when it comes to cinematic effects and stuff. Just that, saying that for the record. But even not being as good as them, very, very time consuming. So yeah, I'm getting back into it. I want to get back into having, the goal is really to have one episode a week on the main garden channel, whether it be an update on my grow or a topic video that relates to the plant. And then continue on with my talk channel, which is actually getting more views than my garden channel. My podcast, I'm doing Q&As, I'm doing topic videos. I have now a new show. It's another topic-based show, one-on-one with growers, but it's more one-on-one with people in cannabis industry in general. So I feel like with my Garden Talk with Mr. Grow podcast, it's so narrowed down to just talking to the person who knows how to grow. So being able to widen that to talk about different various cannabis topics, like I had LMC, who is does amazing cannabis documentaries. Having him, being able to talk to him on a show about his side of things on cannabis consumption, so on and so forth. So that new show is live on Twitch, twitch.tv/Mr. Grow It. Every week I have a new guest come on, and then now it's being transitioned over to YouTube as well. So a new YouTube channel called Unfiltered with Mr. Grow It. So keep an eye out for that. The talk side of things is great. Getting back into the garden side of things as well, the garden type videos. I want to do it all. It's tough.
There's
when you
only
have
24 hours in a day, though.
You got your work
so
handed
many
out for you.
ideas, so much stuff that I could be doing. I mean, I need to update my website. I need to continue to write a book. I'm back in school. It's trying to balance everything, which is
Good thing you can come home to some good medicine though at the end of the day with all that busy schedule.
Oh yeah. Every night medicating, trying to relax.
You're married too, right?
No.
Okay,
I've got a girlfriend.
Okay, so you got to make love to your girlfriend too. Remember that. Don't forget that one either.
So Chris, I just want to let you know that I've been on a lot of the live shows, and I was talking about this upcoming interview, and the people did mention that they appreciated it. You got back to actually growing and showing some plants, because you can give out a lot of information in your podcast and people really enjoy it, but it's not like the simple guy like me that has to have a plant beside him to. That's what I'm talking about. Visualize.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm getting really good feedback from everybody here, and I'm happy. I appreciate it too that I know that there's less money in that end of it, but you're still doing it, and that just shows you how much you like this community.
Yeah, for sure. The gardening videos have to continue. I mean, I've been been on the back burner for too long. So again, the goal is once a week. So I'm going to try to get to that. Now that I have an editor for my other channel, that should give me time to produce some more videos.
We're lucky we have Mark. We can come on. I just throw all kinds of crazy ideas at him, and he has to make it happen. But
yeah,
great to meet you, buddy. So I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Yes, sir. Appreciate
Thank you for everything
Chris.
you do in this community.
Great job.
Thanks, Chris.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, actually, one more thing. If any of you guys want to be on that new show I talked about, the Unfiltered with Mr. Grow It, I'd love to have all you guys on there. I mean, it's just pretty.
The crazy Canadian that
I'm
grows
down.
it for the year. Just hit me up.
Okay. Yeah, sounds
I'm
good.
definitely
We'll maybe talk through Instagram or something. I don't know if I have all your guys' Instagram, but if you would mind to contact me, or I'll get your information through Mark, and we'll be in contact for sure.
I will. What I'll do is I'll do a
I'm in-
CC in all the emails, and I'll CC you in all the emails.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much, brother. Guys, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Only on Perfect Gardens TV.
And here with crab meal, we also have a good source of calcium, but I want people to start looking at their ingredients, not just as a food source, but also what is making up the total mass of that soil for drainage. So these pieces of shell, whether it's oyster shell, crab meal, kelp, the physical matter is going to help in drainage and water retention as well. So not just looking at it as a food source, but also improving your drainage as well.